Hey guys, my name is Mannequin, and welcome to my remix of Walking Away. So I kind of offered to do a walkthrough of the project, and a couple people requested it, so I decided, let's do it. So I have the project open here, and actually, if you look at the title, you can see that it says with intro, and that's kind of this I want to start on right now, just to kind of mention this. When I started this track, it actually did not have that drum intro, so that's why it's very minimal. Because I just kind of slapped that on the end because I didn't really, I wasn't working too hard on this track. It was just something I did spur of the moment because I wanted to do some audio stuff and yeah, I got a kick out of it in the end. So that's all that really counts. But so here we go. Okay, so I have the intro, and if you've heard the track already, then you'll know what I'm doing. But if you haven't, I suggest you click the link that's right. I'll put a link somewhere here, and you could click that and just check out the song really quick. That way I could go through the song and you've already heard it, and I don't have to play through the song first and then talk about it. So because it's already going to take me a long time to go through all this. But I have the intro here, and it's pretty minimal, like I was saying. All I have is a ride, which is that it sounds like a cymbal, but it's actually a ride. And then I have the kick drum, which is actually 2 layers here, which is one that's kind of more punchier and one that's softer, but it's got more bass. And so that's my kick there, essentially. The ride layered on top of it kind of, accentuates it and gives it a bit more space. And then I have the clap that I just that's just going on occasionally. And then you heard that I had the one down lifter that in the beginning, just to kind of give it something to start on. And then a vocal clip, if it'll play. Kind of heard the tail of it there. It'll play again here. And this is where the synths start to come in. Right up here is where the track originally started, actually. Right here. Okay, so first thing I kind of want to talk about is this little synth that I have coming in, and in the beginning, the interesting thing here is I'm not using a usual note pattern. If you notice, the first one's lined up, but the middle one is offset, and the second one is also offset, and the first one in the loop is on time again. So what we have going here is I essentially got, instead of getting one beat and splitting it up into 4 parts like it normally is, I split it up into 3 parts. So that's how you get this interesting kind of groove that I have going on that's not so common. I think I want to say Stampede or Tsunami has that in it in the intro. I don't remember for sure. But yeah, that's where that interesting sort of spacing comes from. And right here I have a reverse reverbed vocal. I think I talked about in build-ups, I think I talked about how to do that. Like get a vocal and then just add reverb to it, and turn the tail around so you get this build-up here. And that's how I got. So the first thing I want to talk about here is just I have the downlifter here. It's a combination of 3 things. The first one is it's just a regular noise sweep, so it goes nothing amazing at all. And then I have one of the boomer effects. It's in the Apple loops up here, just go to loops, type boomer, and there's a whole bunch of downlifters here. So they're pretty cool. To go through them and you might find ones you like. So I used what, number 2. So I actually didn't do any processing to this whatsoever. I should have, because you can tell that when you play this back, the compression like really gets obvious, and it doesn't sound good. But you know, like I said, I wasn't really trying to get like a full finished track. I was just having fun. So and then the final thing I have here is a crash, which just has a reverb on it. And this is my trance reverb that I use for whenever I want a really long reverb. I don't remember how I made this. I was just kind of messing around and I figured out you could use synthesized impulse responses instead of sampled ones. So I used a synthesized one and just made it really freaking long. And yeah, and you get like this huge crash. But yeah, without the reverb and with it, it makes a huge difference. So that's the downlifter there. And then now things are going to start to get a bit quicker since I don't have to talk about all the little things. I can just really focus on the synthesizers and the structure now, because I just kind of went over the basic things. I mostly just repeated stuff throughout the rest of this. You know, these I just kind of took them in parts or whole and then just repeated them. There are a couple of exceptions, but yeah, anyway. So now the cool part here. So this is my intro. I'm going to actually play the intro back without the downlifter, because so the cool thing I have going on here is mostly the pad. That's what gives it a lot of space. Now the pad does sound really deep here, but actually you'll notice if I don't solo it, the whole thing does not actually sound that deep and mysterious. You mostly focus on the lead, which makes sense, the melody. And so the top part of the melody is this here. And then I have something right here to give it space. And I drop this second one out in the next part here because I want it to be thinner. I'm in, I'm out, same story. So what I did was I swapped out, I continued with this one because it's the main one that I want, just like the plucky sound. I would like to show you guys how I made this, but it's made in SynthMaster. So unless you have SynthMaster, it's kind of, it's not, you know, all that helpful. I think this was based off a preset I got. Nope, maybe it was a default preset. Yeah, it looks like it was a default preset. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find it here, but, oh, there we go. It was a default preset. Yeah, I could have just looked here. Yeah, it's a factory preset. So it was based off this. I don't remember how much I changed, but I did, you know, I did base it off that preset, and it's probably relatively similar. And so the next part I have that that's interesting here is this. You don't really hear this, but it adds a lot of depth to that pluck. So it really just kind of adds an extra kind of sense of space to it. And one of the other things I have here is something that I do quite a bit in my tracks, which is use white noise. So that's all it is. Nothing special, just white noise. I think I high pass filtered it. Filter 2. I don't remember. Doesn't look like I did. Sounds like it though. Yeah, whatever. No win, no way out, no glory. But that's another thing that you can't really hear. It's a long echo. There we go. You can't really hear the white noise as much also. If you're paying really close attention, you can hear it. But for the most part, it's just, it adds stereo, like a sense of stereo. So you have the two sides that, you know, they're completely separate, playing completely different random noise. And it just kind of makes it sound a little more spacious on the left and right side. So it doesn't add much like forward and backwards depth, but it does add, you know, left and right kind of separation. So that's why I put that. And it also helps if you don't know what to add, because you don't want to like add a deep pad or something like that, you can try adding low volume noise. That can actually really help add some sort of space to something that sounds really thin. So you try that, and you might want to low pass filter it or high pass filter it depending on, you know, the track you're working on. But that's the thing you could do. Yes, I have listened to a lot of professional tracks, and they do actually put a lot of white noise into their tracks. And I was surprised when I first realized it, but it's something that's good to know. So, okay, here. Just some things I did to the vocals here. I took the vocal, did a little bit of stuff to the high end because you can tell that the vocals are still kind of harsh, but they were harsher before. So I boosted the high end just to kind of give it some brightness, but at the same time I cut in these two areas to get rid of harshness. So I'll just show you. Solo. I need a bigger screen.
In, I'm out, same story.
So where's the other one?
No win, no way out, no glory.
So you can tell that that delay again. You could tell that it's harsher when you turn them off, and it kind of sounds like it's distorting too. So, and one thing that I kind of want to comment about the vocals is the way they are. Actually, I'm going to turn off all the processing.
In, I'm out, same story.
I remember now. There was other
No
stuff.
win, no way out, no glory.
So they just cut off, and I really don't like it when vocals do that. So what I did was I added the delay here. It actually automates in if you watch right here. When I play over this, it just kind of brings the delay in. And if you look at the automation, it looks kind of like that. So that's to kind of, so when you're playing the track, you don't hear the cutoff as much. And what I did add to this also is I added an EQ over the whole thing. What this does is, first of all, it increases the volume. And second of all,
I'm in, I'm out, same story.
this is what gives it the body.
No win, no way out, no glory.
So if you want to, like, I'm going to break down like vocal EQs here. This is let's start from the top. Okay, so this is kind of what gives you the brightness and the crispiness of the vocals, which is something that a lot of people like on it. I like it a little bit too much, so I'll typically add too much high end to my vocals. But then I started getting used to adding around here, which is where most of the vocal sound comes from. If you want to be able to like clearly hear what's going on in the vocals, you boost around this area. Now you got to be careful because if you go too low, it starts to sound like that sort of like. I'll just show you. It makes more sense when I do that. Starts to get this sort of sound if you go too low.
I'm in, I'm out, same story.
But right here is where you get all the clarity.
No win, no way out, no glory.
So I did put it a little lower than here because right here it gets a little bit too sharp. If I it's like when I had it right here, if I bring it back down to here, then it kind of keeps the body and it's got enough clarity.
I'm in, I'm out,
As opposed to
same
that.
story.
And then the low end is something that you don't typically boost all that much, except for the fact that I'm boosting in a whole bunch of other areas. So essentially what I'm doing here is the same as if I would pull this down and I just have two cuts here. And then I were just like add a gain. So really what I'm doing is not so much boosting here, here, and here. It's more of like I'm kind of like cutting here. So that's really, you know, what's going on. And then I actually threw distortion on this in the end. I don't remember why, but I did. So I added compression just to kind of give it some little bit of punchiness, because Camel Crusher, what it does is it really makes things sharp when it comes to like the dynamics. You get really, really, really punchy dynamics, and then so anything that's like not sharp is kind of like flattened beyond belief. But like when you have a consonant, it really brightens the consonants and stuff. So that's why I have that. Unfortunately, you can't download Camel Crusher anymore because they went out of business. But it was free at a time. It might still be floating around the internet. So if you find it, whoop-de-doo. Great plugin. Then I add some distortion. I don't think I have mech distortion. No, I don't. So it's just tube distortion. And tube distortion is known for warming things up. So that's what I got going there. And then obviously just volume. So that's what I have.
I'm in, I'm out, same story.
So you could tell that it doesn't, it sounds like it's pulling the volume up a lot, and it's only pulling it up a little, but at the same time it's kind of adding a whole bunch of it's adding what do you call it, harmonics that are caused by the distortion that just it kind of evens out the sound. So it gets like, you get some of the stuff in the low end, and then it creates harmonics from that in the high end, and what you end up is you could actually cut out some of the low end after you do the distortion, and it sounds like you have low end even though it's mostly just high end. So that's something you can do with distortion, but I'm not actually doing that here. More so I'm just kind of like taking the vocals across the frequency spectrum and just blending it together by using distortion. That's one of the things distortion is known for. So if you just do light distortion on something, you're not actually letting it clip, then that's what you can do, and it adds a lot of tone to it. And it really depends on what distortion you're using as to what that tone sounds like in the end. But, you know, that's kind of... I chose this one because I knew it'd really give it a sort of bright and slightly warm tone, as opposed to Logic's Overdrive will give mostly warmness and a little bit of brightness. This one is a little bit of warmness and mostly brightness. So it's just, you kind of got to get used to it. You can, you know, hear what other people say, like in my case, what I just told you here. But in the end, it's mostly up to your opinion about how it sounds, and then you base your decision off that. So that's pretty much the way this whole first verse goes. I just add 2 hat layers. All I did with these was just loop them and pull the volume down. And so one's kind of more solid, the other's faster and brighter. So you have them both together. You have some a little bit more body in the hats. Actually, it's not necessarily hats, but more of a drum loop. And then you also have the crispy high end. So yeah, that's.
Gotta move, gotta make it out. Gotta go, gotta move, and I'm moving now. I'm walking away, I'm walking I'm walking away.
So 2 things here. First of all, I remembered that with the kick drum here. So originally I had it so it was just these 2. With the what do we call it here? It's not really the intro. I guess the first verse. Here I add this to the kick drum. I distorted it. And there's actually a very good reason behind this. This is the exact same reason I was talking about distorting the vocals. What it does, it makes you think that it has more body than it actually does. So by itself, this is what distortion sounds like. And there's not a lot of low frequency stuff here because I cut all of it out. But it does sound like it has a lot of low end conceptually. So the fact that I have a nice clean sub here, and then I have this distorted part, it doesn't really sound good as a standalone kick drum, but in the track,
Same story. No win, no way out.
kind of makes the kick stand out a little more. So really, you could tell a lot of the stuff I'm doing is a lot of tricks. You could say they're like I'm not exactly like getting each track to sound right. I'm getting the mix to sound right, and in the end, that's what matters. It's not always good practice. Like in the case of what I did with the vocals.
When no way out, no glory.
You could tell that despite the fact that I added the delay, it doesn't really sound all that great by itself, and it's kind of drowned out in the rest of the track, but you could still hear it. If once you know that, you could definitely hear it. So you know, that's something that I should have paid more attention to, focusing on the rest. But you know, when it cuts off like that, there's not too much you could do. I could have tried to like extend it and fade it out by using like repeating that section and reversing it and stuff like, and just doing weird stuff. But I didn't want to spend that much time on it. It sounded okay in the end, so I was like, what the heck. And then with the build here, we drop down to, I used a ghost kick drum, which is, you can't hear anything when it's just playing by itself, because all it does is cause sidechain compression on the other tracks that makes them pulsate. So it's a subtle effect, but if I solo, which one is it? Now I'm lost in my own project. Nope. This one comes into play later. So it just kind of squashes it a little. And then I have the snare roll that I did not really do anything to. I tried to EQ it, but in the end I just decided not to. But this was from the original pack. This was the vocals and the snare are the only thing I used from the stems, which I'll see if I can find a link for them down, and I'll put them down in the description. But if I can't find a link for them, oh well. I'll try to. So look for those in the description if you want to like try to do your own remix of the song. And okay, so let's see, anything I did here. This is just a noise sweep. Not gonna bother playing it back. It just goes. That's all it does. So I have I already showed you the snare, and you could kind of hear from what I went to up here. With the build, I have this chord progression and this one. So what I wanted to do here is I wanted to have the super saw stand out, but it's too thin by itself, and I didn't want to put a super saw, a low pass super saw underneath that, because I didn't want that sort of tone. So I used this to get the mids, and then obviously for the bass, I'm actually using my bass line up here, which I never did show you guys, but this is my bass line. It's a very unique sounding bass line, and what I did here was I got a sound, and originally the sound was bit crushed, but I used Logic's Bit Crusher afterwards. Bit crushers really give you a lot of ring, and how you do that is you change the downsampling. Resolution just kind of makes it sound like it's lower quality. Just drive obviously drives it, but downsampling is what really gives it a tone. So you can see that's that. It's you get like from one plug in there, you get a whole bunch of options. So that's pretty much the build there. One interesting thing though that I did. If you notice, like right here, another synth comes in. So what this one is, that one's, it actually sounds really nice when you have it, when it's thrown underneath everything. So what this one actually came from, I actually did not plan this in and it is not something I creatively came up with per se. I was listening to the build, and I actually I thought I was hearing it in there. So it wasn't something that I kind of decided I'd put in. It was something that I thought I heard in there. So I'm like, oh, cool. Let's actually put that in there so everybody else can hear it. I don't know, like, if I disable this, I don't know if you hear it.
I'm walking away.
But I just kind of, I when I was listening to it, I, like, heard it in there even though it wasn't technically there. So I decided to actually add it.
I'm walking away.
So, right here, obviously, I took the same idea with my kick drum that I had going right here with Or Is Distorted. And I basically just turned up the volume of some of the stuff. So, yeah, you can see here, this is the exact same kick drum, except for one's just a louder volume. The reason I do that is because I don't want to automate some things because I want to be able to change their volume if I need to. Like, if I add another synthesizer, sometimes you need to adjust the volume of the kick drum. So, that's why I did that. And I've already been going for 26 minutes here. Wow. So, anyway, distraction. The drop. The drop is... Actually, you can see it's pretty much packed into a layer, except for the effects. So this is the drop part. That's a whole ton of layers. So what I have up here is, first of all, I have... I'm going to start with this one, because it's the metal sound you're hearing. Of course. Just solo this. And what this is the bass sound, which was a preset that I tweaked, and I honestly don't know how to use wavetables all that much. So I'm not, it does look like it's modulated. It's phase modulated. So that's, you know, I can't really explain what's going on right there, because that's one of the things where I'm just kind of like experimenting, tweaking around, seeing what the heck I could get. And then when I like the sound, I end up using it. So I got this metal sound. I just kind of used the bit crusher to reduce the resolution and add some drive to it. So that's how I get the metal sound. And the rest, all these, are just pluck sounds. I'm going to start with the top. This one. Once again, this one's bit crushed too. I didn't realize that. It's basically just distorting it though. And I have, so, you know, once again, this was based off of a preset Lead Trance Plugger 3, which is a default one. And, so you could actually follow it's Frank Newman. It's one of his. So, so anyway, I just took this one, I tweaked it up a bit, and then I used that and added some distortion with Camel Crusher. So that's where you get a lot of the air and the harmonics in that. And then I compressed it. I used the compressor to sidechain it, and then I just EQ'd it a tiny bit. So you'll notice that some of these have a lot of EQing, others don't. I typically spend more time EQing vocals just because the variety of sounds that vocals come in is very wide, and sometimes it's more suited to a calm track, or sometimes it's more suited to an upbeat track. So I spend a lot of time EQing the vocals, typically. Other things, you'd be surprised how much you could get away with not EQing. And there's actually a very good reason to that, because there's a general rule in audio production: when in doubt, leave it out. And I think the credit goes to Joe Gilder at Home Studio Corner, I think. But that's one of the things that I've heard him say, if nothing else, if no one else rather. So, you know, EQ is one of the things that you gotta not put too much EQ on, because the instant you start putting a ton of EQ on, you're just screwing things up and it doesn't sound like the original. So, you know, worse, like if you don't know if you're EQing right, just limit yourself to using a wide style EQ like this, to where nothing's like pointy. It's just kind of wide. Use only one, and then after that, instead of like looking at the EQ to fit the track in, look at the volume, because the volume is very important. So you'll find that, you know, volume does not seem that important until you start actually really getting into it and really start, you know, placing tracks with volume instead of EQ. So anyway, I had the high end here, and then I have the exact same thing running, slightly different processing, as you can see here. Let's see, looks like I just removed Camel Crusher, I guess, actually, and I changed the EQ a bit. But that was just the low end of it. So together, it sounds like one synth, but it's actually not. Actually, the whole drop sounds like one synth. You just go. Minus this. And now at this point, you can actually start to hear the sub bass that I have going on. So it's just a different style to give the bass a little bit more character. So this is a Parada snare. I think I'm saying that right. I know the guys that made, like, not made, but made this sort of snare sound famous is Eric Prydz. I think it's called a Parada snare. Parada, something like that. But it's that huge, like, sound that you get whenever you're in a drop and stuff like that. I've made better ones. This is not my best one. My best one is actually in the latest track that I made, and it's much more refined in the mixing. Actually listening to this particular remix, I'm listening to the kick drum, I'm like, I ended up distorting the kick drum too much in the drop. But anyway, that's just tangent. So some effects here. This is another Synthmaster one. As you can tell, I use Synthmaster a lot. I'm going to do a review on Synthmaster because I have a lot I have a lot of things to say about the synthesizer. Partially, if not mostly, because it's the cheapest synthesizer you'll find that is of this power level. And when I say cheap, I mean it runs typically $100. And if that does not sound cheap to you, then go look at the price of Massive, Native Instruments Massive, and go look at the price of Sylenth 1 by Leonard Digital. And keep in mind that you also have to count the price of 32 Lives, because Sylenth does not work natively in Logic Pro X because 64-bit. So, and there was one other thing I did in here. Where is my... I had some effect that comes in somewhere around here. Oh no, maybe it's at the end of here. I don't recall. Maybe not. Oh, here it is. It was this. So this is two that one goes, one's that, the other one's lower. And I did something with the panning, I guess. Oh yeah, I just like added modulation to the panning. But as you can see, pretty much every single one of these is Synthmaster. And actually, the cool thing about my latest track is it's made. It used to be made entirely in Synthmaster because I was going to enter it in a contest that there's basically everything, including drums, use Synthmaster. So 98.26% of the track is only Synthmaster. I actually, in the end, I added a sample. I don't remember which one it was, because I found out that because of the way I was using Synthmaster, it would have disqualified mine anyway. So I was just like, what the heck. So anyway, yeah. You just have these two sounds that add a bit of a break to the drop. Because if you just have your drop, you just have your drop that's like going the same pattern straight. And especially if it's only one that's only 2 bars, like you can see the length of this is 2 bars per section, pretty much. And then it kind of repeats with a little bit of variation. But if you have something that's that short, then you kind of want to make sure you do some variation, because the drop will get boring really fast. So so you add those variations in to kind of give it a little bit of extra, a little bit of extra variation instead of just like adding a hat or like a drum loop or something. I did actually add a drum loop in this. It's down at the bottom here at the last part. But you can see I kind of like alternated between a parada snare and that sort of sound. So into the break, the second break here, and I really love the way that it goes into the next break. Let's see here. So it goes up and kind of just drops out, and then it goes into a very minimal and clean break. So I'm just gonna play this back here, and you gotta hear it. Timeout. I muted the downlifters. Sorry. Okay, so before we go on to the next part here, this is two things, only two things, and it sounds very clean and it sounds very spacious. So what I have here is I have the one I showed you earlier. And then I have this vocal chop that's just... And what I did here is I just added a tremolo, so it just kind of bounces back and forth between left and right. And you could see the way it is. It doesn't actually slide back and forth. It actually bounces. Sorry, distracted there. And this is the same EQ curve from before that I used. So and then I added a whole ton of reverb here. There's like, I literally have a reverb and then a reverb on top of the reverb. So like, I reverbed, bro. And I compressed the reverb too. No. I routed a bus. Something's on top of this. I don't recall what. Bus 15. Anybody want to tell me what bus 15 is? I need a bigger screen. Actually, let's just... Well, I'm not going to dig for it. It's going to take me too long to find. Whatever. I did something there. I don't know what I did. Because there's like, theoretically, there should be nothing running. So I don't know why I'd route a bus to it. Oh, it was for the drop because I was using the same track for the drop. So I believe I had some sort of synthesizer running out. So this would just kind of duck under the synthesizer. So it wouldn't be as prominent. It was just kind of like a background thing in the drop. So that's the deal. But anyway, I really like how this turned out. Before we get to that part, because I really like the second half more than I like the first half. So let's see here. Don't want to loop. Okay. So all I did here, aside from the vocals coming in, was I added the same loop that I had before, and I added a bass line underneath, and you could really feel it come in. Here's the bass line. So you can see from what I've done with all my tracks and bass lines is that, you know, just because a synth sounds like something by itself doesn't mean it's going to sound like that in the mix. So it sounds like this ow, 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 ow. And, but when you listen to this mix, it just kind of sounds like a heavy punch. So play it back here so you kind of hear it. I really like how that part turned out. That's my favorite part in the entire track. I will tell you that right now. That is my favorite part. I think I did have to do something with the flex time. Yes, the vocals were not timed correctly here. So what I had to do is I actually had to add a couple points and just retime them. How you do this is you click flex time and you, for vocals, you select monophonic. And then essentially you'll just get a whole bunch of these little lines here. And you find the part that you want. So just solo this.
I'm rolling out. I'm walking away. No.
So, like if I wanted this to be dead on, like if it was slightly offset, like it is, yeah, it's at this point it doesn't matter. If you start to time things too perfectly, it starts to sound a little weird. So keep that in mind. So all you do is you just add a little point here and then drag it to where you want. So there were a couple parts that I actually had to move it because it was off timed. Typically you want to line the vocals up as best as you can, make sure it's in the right BPM, and I'll try to do a video on that later, like finding the BPM of vocals if you don't have the BPM of the original track. I'll try to do that. So anyway, you want to line it up as best as you can, and then if there's like somewhere where it's like, you know, you have from here to here, like everything is dead on, but there's like something right here that's kind of like shifted a little, then you would start tweaking it and just kind of, you know, making it so it's perfect, because vocalists tend to go off just a little bit sometimes depending on their background music when they're recording. If it's a very flowing background music, they will it's very common that they will get off time, and it doesn't sound bad, it actually sounds perfectly fine because the flowing portion of the track fits the vocals and the fact that the vocals are not always on time. So you can see that perfection is not always perfection. Sometimes it sounds better when you don't have perfection. So, next part of the track. I did something that I heard in Martin Garrix's track Proxy right here. And it's... I'll just play it first and you could hear it. So what I did here was a couple of things. So first of all, you could tell right off the bat that I had like so it doesn't have too much tail. It has a little bit of tail, but not too much. And then what I have on top of that is the part that really makes it stand out. This crash. You can tell that I just let it cut in and out. I don't actually fade it at all. And there's a very good reason for this. It's what creates that very staccato sound, despite the fact that we're doing something long. So it just kind of sounds like warm and muddy and just kind of blah, blah, blah. But the instant I add this staccato crash, and then obviously I have a kick drum underneath to kind of give it a little bit of body. So when you take that out, you got it. It is over now. It is over now. Actually doesn't sound that bad. And it's not, I think it's actually distorting because I have a little bit too much compression up here. Wow. No, I have a lot of compression. That's not good. Kind of, yeah, it's definitely distorting, but yeah. So basically, I just had those really dry sounds, and then I have the this little part here, which is just like a whole bunch of. So you can tell that I have this one up on top. It goes. Doo-doo-doo-doo. And the rest actually do not do that final note. So together it gets this very unique sound that is kind of like what Zedd does with some of his stuff. So it sounds like this. And so yeah, that's what I did there. And then we just go. I'm walking sounds better.
And it's over now. And it's over now.
Yeah, that kick rumbles too much there, so.
I'm walking away. I'm walking away.
So pretty much the only thing I did here was I added. There we go. Once again, another Synthmaster preset. Tubeless Tube. So it's called. So that's what I did for the variation between drops. I just added this one in the end. My latest track, I did something similar, except for it was kind of almost the opposite. Oh, that's cool. I like those. I remember. Forgot I added those. Okay, so they come in later. I like this little blip that I have. It's just kind of like a nice. So, hollow bass. That's what I based it off of. Bass. Pun. But I think I tweaked this one up a lot, so. And the outro is nothing special. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all I really have to cover in this track here. Is there anything I missed? I'd kind of like to cover how to do a Parada snare. But I don't think I'll do it in this one. I think I'll actually do a full tutorial on that later. So just because it's something that you kind of, it's a lot of trial and error, and I don't know if I figured it out. My latest track, the Parada snare, sounds pretty good, but I'm not entirely sure that I'm confident in it quite yet. This one, I don't really like how it turned out. It kind of just sounds like impact of white noise. So, yeah. So I won't really cover how I went over that. If anything, I'll look at how I did my newer track. But yeah, the newer track I keep talking about, by the way, in case like I've released a couple new tracks since you've seen this, if you're like watching it several months down the road. The one that I'm talking about is Ice Blade. And so that's the name of my newest track. I'm hoping to get it premiered by someone, but I might just post it up by myself. We'll see. Not sure how that's going to work out. But anyway, hopefully you guys got something out of that. And hopefully you learned some from it. So thank you so much for watching. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's nothing else I wanted to cover. If I missed anything and you want me to cover something else, just kind of ask. And what I'll do instead of like, you know, adding annotations to the video or something, I'll just like create videos for those specific things, because you'll find it's tangent here. Bear with me, people. You'll find that the best way to work is with presets, and then tweak the preset. And if you know how to make something from scratch, or you really want something unique, then start from scratch. But otherwise, use the presets to be inspired and then tweak them to get exactly what you want. If you don't think that's how the pros do it, go watch a video of Armin van Buuren in the studio. He does it, man. Like Armin van Buuren, Martin Garrix, Showtek. Now I know Zed, Skrillex, and a few others. They like to do a lot more stuff from scratch, but they still use presets. So yeah, it's a tangent there. But anyway, just because I'm using a preset doesn't mean I know everything that's going on behind it. I'm not a genius per se, but I do know how to do some stuff, and I'll teach you guys everything I know, hopefully. So yeah, like I said, if there's anything I missed that you wanted me to cover, just ask, and I'll try to make a video on that. And if I think that's got enough content for a full video and it's, you know, relevant enough, to where I should make a video. Otherwise, I'll probably just respond to you with a little quick blip at how I did it, or, you know, just answering your question. So anyway, pretty big tangent there, but thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.